Oh, yes. Welcome into Snow The Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, the only Flyers podcast. I'm Russ Joy, joined as always by that absolute beaut, the man who I do every post game on the Press Row show with, a man who brings joy and warmth into the cockles of even the coldest heart in the Delaware Valley. That's none other than Bundy. Find him on Twitter at Therien6. How are you?
I'm doing good, Russ. I feel like I got like a post-hockey hangover. Like 2 nights. I mean, one game starts at 6. The next game, last night, it was one too many blows, one after another, to sustain for for that 24-hour stretch. And I mean, that was ugly. It really was rough night. But other than that, I'm doing well. It's been some beautiful weather in late October as we approach Halloween. Hopefully for your little ones, you get nice weather for them for Halloween. But
Yeah.
if that's about the only positive thing I have to say about the last 2 days is the weather has been good.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest here, like I almost wanted to name the show House of Horrors, but they went down to Washington. If it had continued as a home stretch, it absolutely would have been a perfect name. But
Washington's a house of horrors anyway, whether it's a hockey
yeah,
team or whatever
yeah,
it is. It's a house of horrors.
yeah.
So
Last night, I think that we have to try to find the balance here, Bundy, because I believe that a lot of the people who listen to this show or who watch the show, who just watch Snow the Goalie, that they also check in on the Press Row show. But in case they don't, I feel like it is sometimes important for us to kind of set the stage for what we've been talking about over on the Press Row show. When we last spoke on Tuesday night, after the Flyers lost at home, they did manage to score their first goal at home in 2 games. When we got to post game, it was very glum. It was very down. And I looked at you and I said, hey, like, what are we looking for in Washington? Are you concerned? And you said, hey, I think that there's a chance that they could kind of turn things around. When you and I and Ant were going back and forth on a text thread yesterday with our predictions, you're like, I kind of feel like they have to be able to turn around. Like Washington, like they can't do it twice in a row. You said the one thing that you were the most concerned about on Tuesday night was if they lose in Washington and they lose in a resounding fashion, or if they lose in a way where they look lackadaisical, then it's a concern.
Mm-hmm.
They showed a tiny bit of fight on Wednesday night in Washington, a little bit. Like they kind of got themselves back in that game a little bit. But I'd say for the most part, it looked like a very low-spirited effort for much of the game. How do you feel like they played? And coming out of that one, are you now concerned?
I am. I mean, it's still very early, Russ. I don't want to like make it look like it's an overwhelming, a ship sinking, because I don't think it's that. But I was looking for one thing last night: the response to the bad effort in Philadelphia, and I didn't see it. I said that was the most critical test of the early season would be to see how they responded against the Capitals. And they didn't. I mean, they came out again with no energy. They had late in the first period, they had credit for 2 shots on goal, but it was really 1. I mean, it just last night was horrible, man. It was really not a good night. And I like to see how guys respond after a loss, because it tells you competitively where they're at. I mean, no one's perfect. You're going to make mistakes in a game, and I said that the other night. I mean, there's games where I absolutely stunk in the NHL. Every single player that ever played in the NHL has had nights where you play a long time where it's not your night and you're going to look bad and fans are going to not stand you. But to have lost and have a sour taste in their mouth, I always say the one thing you can control with sports, and I tell my kids the same thing, is how hard you compete. You can have a rough night. Things aren't going to go your way. A ball's going to bounce the wrong way. A puck's going to go is going to ricochet. A football is going to fumble. Whatever it is, but you can always control your temperament and how you compete and how you perform in your sport. It's no different at any level, whether it's high school, college, or pros, and how you respond and have pride in that. And I just didn't see in a division game the response that was needed yesterday in Washington was abysmal. And let's be quite honest with you. I mean, you can sell after the game like, oh, guys started getting going. Come on. I mean, it took 4-0 with your skates in quicksand before you decided to wake up. And let's be honest, another part, the Washington Capitals are not world beaters.
Yeah.
Like, they showed who they were, I think, in the second half of that game when the Flyers had no choice but to just keep playing. It was 4-0. They made it interesting. But the Capitals looked like every bit as much of a beer league team as you could possibly find. I think I got that off of here. Someone mentioned beer league. I mean, Ovechkin looked like he was in a men's league last night for 2 nights. He got a goal, but it was an empty netter, and I guess he's going to beat 99 somehow, getting probably half of the remaining goals as empty netters, and that's fine. It's all fair. Nothing against him. He's a great player, and he's in the twilight of his career, no doubt. But that was not what I wanted to see. I wanted to see the Flyers coming out last night with their hair and their pants on fire, and I saw none of that. I saw a team that turned it up a little bit after they were down 4-0, and it easily could have been 6-0. Fedotov, people are going to give him crap for maybe a couple of those goals. He also made a couple saves that gave them a little bit of life, too, to come back. That big save on the first step with the backhander on the power play. But I didn't like anything about that game again yesterday, Russ, and the Flyers here fortunately have a couple of home games to try to remedy that this weekend with Minnesota and then Montreal on Sunday night. But you have to start somewhere. I mean, you can't be negative the whole time. And I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying you have to find a way to get out of this. And right now they're in some serious trouble in the early season because you end up chasing games now. Now your goal is just to try to get back to 500, and that's going to take probably some time, unless they go ring off 4 or 5 in a row, which could happen in this league. I really do believe even, you know what, Russ, I've seen it happen. It's not like, we're still top heavy, but I also don't want to see them lose 10 in a row either.
I think that there's this moment that the fan base kind of has to reconcile a few different things. And we can dive more into last night's game. Like I saw a couple of comments here that Derek Swider here over on YouTube said biggest positive from last night was the compete level of Mishkov. He wanted that win bad. Like there were a few moments where like they gave up that goal on the line change where Zamula made himself look like a passing target and then got off the ice. And it looked like there were a couple of other players that just actively didn't go after the puck. One, because I guess they thought that there was going to be a too many men penalty, and it resulted in what was an empty net goal. I think there are two elements. Like
he had a good job. He did a nice job on the power play.
Yeah, he had that goal. Like it's not the flashiest goal, but it's a confident play. Put the puck on net.
Yeah, we don't see that. Just toss it to the net. I mean, it's a simple play. Then the other one, he had an assist where he just moved the puck, and then TK took a ridiculous side angle shot. Mishkov's been fine. I mean, I'd like to see more 5-on-5 even strength from him, but I'd like to see more from everybody on the team at even strength. Listen, their numbers right now, even strength, are just pathetic. There's no like fudging that. There's no selling it in any other way. Those numbers are like sticking out like a big flashing light right at you, and you can't get away from them. Because if your numbers are that bad, I mean, if you look at the teams in the league at the end of the year, just go down to standings and look at their plus minus in terms of goals for and goals against. The teams that fall off really, really are the worst even strength teams. They're the ones where they're completely out of this early. You can say you got a bad penalty kill, or your power play is not up to snuff, or whatever it is, but the teams that really, really cannot play even strength hockey, they're done and they're long gone by Christmas time. They're pretty much out of the playoffs, and there'll be the 2 or 3 teams at the bottom of each conference, and that's what I'm hoping that the Flyers need to get out of this. Does getting Owen Tippett a goal last night, one that just found a way home, does that get him going? There's a lot of questions that come out at the end of a game like that, but certainly my concern level spiked after I said that was the most important game this team was going to play in the early going last night, and they failed to show up again in the early going.
Yeah, I mean. So here's where we have to be at. I get it. You're an eternal optimist. You played for this team. You care about this team at an entirely different level. But I'm saying you tend like you're actively trying to look for the positive, and I want to join.
Early in the year, I have to look for a positive because if not, we've got 75 games left where it was like we don't want the 2021 version. We hope we killed. But right now, the Flyers are not getting, and I'll let you pick it up where I'm going. Well, they're not getting results, but they haven't helped themselves either. And if this team cannot produce at 5-on-5 or even strength, then it doesn't matter how good their power play or special teams or whatever else is good, or all the beautiful blossoming new things that they have here. It doesn't matter because you can't go chasing a schedule for 75 games. And that's what is so, so important right now where they're at in terms of collecting points and making it interesting for the fans, making it interesting for this team. So at least we think, or feel like we're in the trajectory to try to get a playoff spot. Right now, this team has 3 points on the season. And every game they
Two of
lose in
them
regulation,
came in the
points they're
first
not
game.
getting that they're going to be chasing all year long. And we were treated last year to something that was quite special. They won games they shouldn't have won. They kept their head above water until the wheels came off late season. But there was a lot of optimism and reason to be optimistic. So I'm going to go with that because I saw it. But I also have to recognize with complete honesty that this is not last year. And every year is completely different. And right now they've got themselves in a real bad conundrum.
I think that everybody at this point knows where I'm at. Everybody knows where Ant is. Well, nobody actually does know where Ant is today. Ant can't join us for live shows at this hour. So it's me and you. But everybody knows how I think the team is best suited to try to build a contender into the future. And I do think that Danny Briere and Keith Jones are very aware that and Jonesy was the one who said in that roundtable that we did before the season that there's a lot of cap issues on this team. They inherited a lot of cap issues. Now they gave themselves some of those cap issues. Sealer contract, the TK contract, the Tippett they did kind of add a lot of money and a lot of term, but you can't exactly go into a year with 5 guys under contract beyond the current season. So those things are to be expected.
Yeah.
I don't think that all of those were great investments, but we don't need to relitigate that. The thing that they have to do, especially given what the cap constraints are, is they're going to have to at some point add elite talent. The only way for them to do it feasibly is hockey trades, which they just haven't shown a propensity for doing, or the draft. There's no magic wand to wave. You're not getting the pre-salary cap era back into hockey. Doesn't exist. Will never come back. The Flyers actually, in their own way, they're almost being forced into having to actually look at the draft as a significant way to add talent this year. As negative as I feel watching the team play, and I am more disheartened by the fact that it looks like they are so unconnected, they're disconnected. They from a mental standpoint, from a playing together as a team standpoint, they look disconnected. They don't look passionate. They don't look like they're giving it their all for one another. I do think that they have tuned this coach out. I will continue to bang that drum until the drum has no surface area left to bang.
It's hard to argue with seeing the last 2 nights. It's hard. It is.
Yeah. And so I look at all that and as negative as I feel, on the flip side, I go, well, this is actually the best thing for the team, not for the individuals, not for the players. It's not. Okay. Losing sucks. Losing culture, bad. Ultimately can have really negative ramifications. And we saw that in the past stagnate the development of some players on this team and guys who are no longer here. At the same time, your only way to add elite talent is going to be in the draft. They have lost 6 straight games. This ultimately isn't the worst thing. And if the wheels fall off of this season, that's just fine. Because if you end up with a top 5 pick, you end up with a top 3 pick, guess what? Better chance that you hit. Nolan Patrick notwithstanding, James Van Riemsdyk notwithstanding, you give your chance a legitimate opportunity to get a star player to pair with Matvei Mishkov and hopefully turn this thing around. But even if you don't, they are going to have to make some hard decisions here. And I think that this start, if this continues, whether the head coach is here, whether they relieve the head coach of his duties at some point, whatever happens, if this play continues, they cannot justify keeping some of the guys in town that they have been unwilling to move in the past. At some point, you have to look around and say, is Scott Laughton worth keeping here? Really nice guy, recent dad. We congratulated him on the Press Row show. Scott Laughton to me is a perfect bottom 6 forward on a Stanley Cup contending team. And I would love, on a human level, I would love to see Scott Laughton get to compete for a Stanley Cup because it sure as hell isn't happening here anytime soon. But they've held on to guys like that they maybe shouldn't have in the past. And if this team is going to be bad, and Bundy, they right now look very, very bad, maybe this does get them having the conversations about, all right, we're not going to do it now. You don't see trades this early. But when that deadline comes around, if we're a bottom 5, bottom 7 team in the league, you have to at least start entertaining some of those conversations that you might have been hesitant to have.
For sure. But they have guys you try to keep the salvageable. I don't want to mean that no one's salvageable, but you try to bring the guys around and keep guys that you want to keep, right? Like Sealer. I mean, we thought Sealer did a good job last year. Remember, we heard he wanted like a lot more money than he actually ended up getting. But
Yeah.
you know, he's a guy that you like in your lineup, right? Like he's a guy. There's 6 defensemen. They can't all be top 4 defensemen. So you need somebody
Sure.
to provide toughness and some depth. Owen Tippett earned his contract for the way he was playing last year. At the time, he was. Konechny was the best player on a team on a non-playoff team many years in a row. Like that's what he was. So they had to pay a guy that was going to hold out or get close to the number he wanted, and they got a deal together. You have to keep some players, and remember, you have to meet a basement, right? A floor, a cap floor. So you have to have guys, and you have to have some guys are going to have big contracts to get there. But the problem is when your big guys don't get the job done. That's always the biggest problem. And so when your highest paid players are not producing or they're not getting the job done defensively or for whatever you ended up paying them that significant amount of money, then your team is sometimes fucked. I hate to put it any other way. But that's exactly what happens. If your big guys don't do it, it's going to trickle down to everybody else.
There's the Bundy bomb, my friends.
And I appreciate that, Russ. Thank you so much. I felt good getting that off the tip of my tongue early here on a Thursday morning.
Jerry Martin over here makes the good point. Thank you for the super chat, Jerry. Greatly appreciated. It's rebuilding. Losing is going to happen. It sucks. And Jerry, I totally I understand it. And I agree. And here's the thing: people don't like. And I always look at this as somebody who's a fan of 5 teams in this city, who looks at things from more of a macro view and doesn't just get like pigeonholed into only watching or following one league. The Sixers lost a lot of games en route to trying to race to the bottom and get elite talent. And a basketball player like a Joel Embiid, like a Ben Simmons, like a Markelle Fultz, they can make a more immediate impact. There are fewer players. Those guys are able to step in as rookies and make a legitimate difference right away. And it's different in hockey, and I totally get that. The losing culture only permeates itself or only really negatively impacts a team if you allow it to get away from. Like if a team isn't talented enough, but they're going out and they're busting their ass every night, that's something that a fan base can still support. Even in some of those really rough process years with the Sixers, you wouldn't want to go out and pay market value for the ticket, but you'd go pay value on the secondary market because you'd say, you know what? They're not going to win, but I still enjoy the sport, and I know that they're going to play hard. All of those process years, there were very few games that I would walk away from, and I would watch every single one where I'd say, these guys are dogging it. But this Flyers team right now, I'm not willing to say they're dogging it, but they don't look like they're giving it their full 100. And if that's the case, that to me is a bigger concern because you do have guys who are making actual sums of money. You do have guys who are supposed to be leaders on this team or supposed to take the next step. If they blew this whole thing up and moved a bunch of those guys, and you saw a bunch of dudes who didn't belong in the league because they're AHL players, they're minor league guys, they're journeymen, but they were busting their ass, people they'd be upset. They might not fill the building as much, but they'd at least say, you know what, like this is a Philly team. They're going out and they're trying, and we can at least respect that. We've been pounding this, like we've been hearing about culture since Torts got hired. The culture looks like it's gone. It looks dead. It doesn't look existent right now. And that to me is a legitimate problem.
I was just reading this one here from our guy here, Joseph, and he said the NBA is different because one guy can make a playoff team. Mm-hmm. One guy can't change a team from worst to playoffs in hockey. Well, McDavid may want to disagree with you. They went from the worst team in the league, like at the time, to winning a ton of games and getting to the Stanley Cup Finals. But I get what you're saying, Joseph. One guy generally can't do it. With a normal team, all things said, it's hard to get one guy in hockey to carry you to the promised land.
Yeah.
Although Gretzky did a pretty good job in the 80s.
Like Bundy, like I think that the real struggle here, I always use the term hockey purgatory because it genuinely has felt like since, I don't know, 2010 was a great run. But like for the most part, it feels like the team has sort of been in that hockey purgatory. We kind of make the playoffs. We kind of miss the playoffs. We're close, but we're not close enough. We're not drafting high enough in the draft to find elite talent. But we're like, they have spent so much time in this like mediocrity bubble that it's like, you look at this roster right now, and this is the thing that I do want to throw to you. And this is the thing that people have to reconcile. We knew that the team wasn't as good as they were in the first half of last year. We knew that a lot of that was exceptional goaltending from Hart and Ersson. We thought that they probably weren't as bad as the team that totally fell apart after the Couturier benching last year. They didn't add a lot. They barely added at all in the offseason. They brought Mishkov over. That's about it. Hart was gone. Fedotov is in as the backup. Are they really this bad? Is the talent really this bad? Because if so, they've invested some money in guys that don't look worth the paper the contract was printed on at this point. And that to me is a much, much, much bigger concern.
Russ, I think every team's got some guys like that have high contracts that aren't paying off right now. But I mean, again, it's a long year. The guys they have in there had. I know people are going to complain about the amount of money in the term for Konechny because he'd never. I think his career high was like 60. Was it 68 points? I think 68, yeah. Right. And they're going to compare a contract like that to that of Pasternak, those kind of guys, right? That like a Kucherov with numbers, even though he makes a little bit more than that, but. You start getting into that comparison ground. And I can tell you could I like TK, but you can sit here all day trying to compare him to somebody who makes $1 million or $2 more than him. And they're not really the same player. Like sure. If Boston went to you and said, hey, we're going to trade you Pasternak for Konechny, you want to do the deal? I'm warming up the van pretty quick,
yeah.
To get that trade happening pretty fast. But that's just being honest. It would be like,
yeah, I mean, you could even look at the Reinhart deal, right? Like Reinhart took less money. Florida tax situation is very advantageous.
That's a problem. That is a problem. The more you look at it league wise, because you're going to have a guy that's going to have I mean, how you're going to say to yourself, how does Konechny make more than a Stanley Cup champion? The guy that got a goal, the game winning goal,
center.
And is a center.
It's
silly. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? When you look at it, but I mean, taking less taxes, NHL is going to have to figure that out, or the players are going to have to stand together, because guys are going to start leaving, taking like a few $100,000 less to go to another city, or they're going to stay in Texas and Florida, and they're going to start listening to the Snow the Goalie free agency advice: never sign ever with a state or. Ever sign with a state or a country that begins with a CA. And that will limit down your stuff. That's how you do it. Everybody in Canada is losing it right now. It's true. Who the hell would want to go up there and pay 50% in tax and convert your money if you're a free agent?
Yeah.
That's why they had to pay Draisaitl half the team's salary cap to keep him.
Yeah. I want to go over to this from Nick DeCristo. Trying to have patience in the new regime. Oh, by the way, Nick, thank you for the super chat. Trying to have patience with the new regime, but I feel like we've had the same conversations over and over again since the 04-05 lockout. Let me see if I can kind of distill what Nick is probably talking about. When things are going well, you say, all right, but are they really sustainable? When things go poorly, it's have the players given up? Has the coach lost the locker room? Have the players given up? Is it on the players? Is it on the coaching staff? One of the things that I've definitely seen going around in recent days, while I've been saying hey, I do think that for better or worse, I think the players have tuned out the coach. I'm fairly confident in that. You then get, once again, it's the players giving up on a coach. They did that with Vigneault. They did that with Hackstall. They did that with Berube. They did that with Lavi. At some point, it has to fall on the players. The onus has to fall on the players. And I keep saying, not that many guys who played for a bunch of those coaches are still on this team. So I don't know. And coaches don't have a long shelf life in this league. It's not like a Flyers specific problem where you have a coach who comes in for a few years and then is gone, right? Like we don't have 20 coaches in the league right now who are in their 10th or 11th season with their respective teams. I don't know what people are expecting, but do you see what Nick is saying there? That it feels like a lot of the conversations that we're having probably could have been had in 2006 or had in 2014 or in 2021. It does kind of feel like we have a lot of the same chats.
I can't disagree, Russ. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's true. I mean, the one thing you don't want, the season that left everybody with the worst taste in their mouth was that 2021 season. I mean, it was just something else, man. And it left a foul taste in everybody else's mouth. I see somebody saying the Flyers need to get rid of the culture of the Flyers. Somebody wrote earlier, no, that's not it.
You tried that.
Yeah, I know somebody said it earlier, but I that's not really true at all. I mean, every team has their history that they run on. It doesn't mean that that's what's ever going to win again. Was a good culture that once did, but in the '70s and then the transcending teams that have had good, passionate playoff runs but fell short. Um, there's a lot of there's certain things that I know why the fans are so frustrated, and I think we are too. At what happened at the beginning of the year. Um, they overachieved last year and they actually produced and they made it really interesting the whole year. Like they had their head above water. They were in a good spot. All that happened last year was a complete collapse that had to happen for them to not make the playoffs, and it did. It was a complete overhaul collapse. So that's the one reason why there's frustration now, because we saw results last year. And for the most part, the same team is back. I'm starting to wonder if Sean Walker really was the glue to the whole thing.
That says something, though.
Coincidentally,
that says a lot, though, if that's the case.
Coincidentally, it's like when that guy left, like it's like everything else just went downhill. And I know I don't know if it had anything to do with it. You could sometimes have a guy that brings some chemistry together in certain ways, but not usually like that. But that's the reason why there's a lot of people that are frustrated. The other reason too is last year we had a lot of depth. There was a lot of depth. I would say scoring, but a lot of depth production. Like they were rolling four lines, right? And sometimes you couldn't even tell the semblance some nights, the difference between 1 through 4. Right? They were just rolling. Exactly. They were playing hard, competing for each other, getting on loose pucks, winning puck races, winning puck battles. They did all those things. We're not seeing that at that level this year. The other thing that I know they'll talk about, and I'll give them I didn't love his game last night. I didn't hate it, but Fedotov, there's a game there, the Seattle game. They felt like the Flyers deserved better in that game. I don't like to blame the goalie for every single thing that goes on, but that's been something we have to keep an eye on a little bit as well. And then the fourth thing I'm looking at is, what's the relationship between the coach and the players? If there is, every coach has an expiration date, and it's up to a management to decide if that expiration date has indeed been reached. So that's not our job. I think the first year, Torts did a really good job of bringing in the culture of teaching guys how to be pros. But last night was the first time I can say that I wanted to see how the team responded after the game before. And because of the hangover that was left from the end of last year, I wanted to see what the beginning of this year looked like, to see if there would be any flow from that into this year, because it's the same group of guys. And you can't flip a switch and go back to another time. You can't jump in a hockey time machine and make everything change. Yeah. When there's bad blood and a lot of other things that go on, they don't go away in the next year. They just don't. And I don't know if we're seeing that. I just don't know if this is who this team really is. Or if they're better. I think they're better than what they've shown, Russ, to be quite honest with you. Now, do I think they're an above 500 team right now? They certainly don't deserve to be for the way they've played most nights. And as a record, they're the last place in the conference. They might even be close to last place in the league. My concern right now is for the fans. I want this team to do well, because we saw something last year. We saw some amazingly good buildings last year. It was fun to win, beating Vegas, beating some really good teams in the first 50 games. It was fun. It was great to be down at that building. The guys were working hard, and that's when we say culture. Flyers, when you maybe make up for what they had in talent over the years, and beating teams maybe they shouldn't have in playoff series, because they did work hard, because they did outwork teams, because they were diligent and they rewarded themselves with that hard work. But I think now you have to really have a hard look now. And I don't look at a team like you're losing, oh, you got to fire your coach. I don't think that that's right. I think you have to look at how the team is playing over a select amount of games. And someone just asked, if I'm the GM, what would I do? I would take in every bit of inventory that I've seen from January 1st of last year to right now. First half of the year last year was good grace. The Flyers did amazing. The coach did a great job getting these guys to play hard. Mm-hmm. But something went wrong. Something happened that made those wheels fall off. And if I'm the GM, I'm looking and saying to myself, can my team get better? Can my team win and produce hockey games so that we can show that the work we've done is positive and it's transcending and we're trying to move forward? Or is it really a situation where the guys have tuned him out, they're not listening anymore, And the hard decision has to come from within to say, guys, what are we as a team? Are we that team yet that we think is better than that? Or are we going to keep the coach and let these players figure it out because we've changed the coach so many times? Torts is making quite a bit of money here for this year and another year. And I have to think at some time there has to be some fiscal responsibility. But the money will never come into play if you go to a guy like Dan Hilferty or the Flyers chairman and say, we absolutely have to make the change. Remember one thing, Danny and Jonesy didn't hire this guy.
Yeah.
That was a Fletcher hire, and one thing
it technically wasn't even a Fletcher hire. Fletcher didn't want him because Fletcher knew that Tortorella chews up and spits out GMs. That was the third party. That's when the prior regime.
I understand that, but I don't want to get into the semantics. But on paper, it was Chuck Fletcher's hire. All right.
Yeah.
Whether Bob Clark said, let's bring him in. We remember at that time when the Flyers brought Torts in, we even called him, he is the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
They didn't have a marketable player that was beyond the hiring of that coach at the time. That's a dead truth. And I won't forget how it went down. So whatever you want to say, Fletcher hired him with the help of perhaps some outside sources with that advising.
It was that Billy King firm. Remember they brought in the third party firm. That's what I'm talking about.
That was Billy King. Billy King was responsible for Jonesy.
Yeah, but I thought they were also
Billy King
he wasn't part of the Torts thing.
Billy King asked a bunch of was doing a lot of asking, going through the interview process. He was the one that hired Jonesy. I don't remember Billy King being involved. No, there's no way. Would he have been involved with hiring John Tortorella? I think Fletcher went in. They had an idea who they wanted, and I think it came down to somebody pushing Tortorella because they really did need a face. They needed something that would pique the fans' interest at the time because there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah.
So, but again, if your coach is the anchor that's hooking your team and sinking the ship, then that's a decision the GM has to make with Danny and Jonesy have to make together. And you know what? They can do what they want, to be honest with you. That's still, to me, the last thing that they have to pull is a new coach because they've never had a chance to pick their own coach.
Yeah. And typically GMs want to pick their own.
Always.
You're right. They haven't had that opportunity.
Name me another coach in the league where he's there and the GM just inherited him and kept him.
Yeah.
And like Anthony said, they're trying 3 guys, the president, the GM, and the coach to try to make this thing work. I don't know. Has it worked or not? They've salvaged some guys. They've re-signed some guys. Torts has made some players better, but then there's guys that are going backwards a little bit again. These are the questions that are hard to ask, and they're even harder to answer. So that's what it'll be. And if they choose and elect to keep him here, it's because they feel that he's doing the job and that the players are not in turn getting the job done on the flip side. There's got to be accountability all around. When the team's playing like this, it can't just be, it's a coach, it's a goalie, it's the players. It's everybody. If you want to call it a team effort, it's also a team effort in losing, and everybody has to recognize that.
I have to say really quickly, because we have a bunch of super chats to get to here. Andrew Fawcett sent this one over about Fedotov's 5-hole. And I'm trying to figure out how to work in the Fedotov conversation. Don't worry, Andrew. We appreciate both of those super chats. We're going to get to them here in a second. I want to go to this one from Jerry first. Thank you, Jerry, for the super chat. When comparing players' contracts, you have to look at taxes, and that's something that'll be looked at during the next CBA. But I think the plan moving forward is trading anyone for any positive value. So if you're talking about roster construction, if you're talking about what this thing is supposed to look like, assuming that they don't pull the nose up on it in a really meaningful way. If they end up being a below 500 team for much of the season, that's one thing. If they're a bottom 5 team in the league, that's an entirely different thing. Now, I kind of brought this up to you earlier, but the Scott Laughtons of the world don't really have a place here if they're going to be a below 500 team, right?
If somebody's offering you a first-round pick, and I think we're probably past that point now.
They've missed that opportunity at least twice.
But hold on, but that's okay because Danny did say that he's like an inclusive type of guy, brings people together. You need people like that on your team. So I'm not going to trash anybody for keeping a good guy around, Russ. He's not a brutal player. For what you're paying him, he's a bottom 6 player. And sometimes it's hard to replace a guy like that. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to pay someone a little less, but we don't know who he is or has the character that Scotty Laughton has, that ends up becoming a bad deal. And I know everybody say, we get a first-round pick. Well, you don't know if that first-round pick's going to turn out. You have no idea.
But you also don't know that you're going to use that first-round pick, right? That could be part of a package to move up. That could be part of a package for another player. I think that the way that I look at it, this is, and we're not going to get lost here on the Laughton thing, but All right, so there were at least 2 opportunities to trade him, either for a first or a conditional first, over the last, 18 months. You went out and you got Hathaway, and you went out and you got Paling. I would say that Paling, comparatively, is an okay Lawton replacement. Or if you're gonna play a wing, Hathaway is an okay enough replacement as a bottom 6 forward. I would rather have one of those guys or somebody who's similar to them, plus that first round pick, than just having Scott Lawton, especially considering the fact that they're in the midst of a rebuild. I think that's the kind of thing that you have to consider, and those are the kind of things that you have to put forward if you are actually serious about a rebuild. Now, the real issue here, Bundy, is they have a lot of guys who, in theory, you could say, hey, a team might be interested, but who are they? I saw you had Rick Halverson's comment up earlier about who actually wants to go out and acquire any of these players. It's if you go player by player down this roster, right? There aren't that many guys who would be that attractive because of the length of their contract or the term. And you don't want to have to trade a guy away and eat half of his salary. That I think is where they're going to end up with this other issue. Let's say hypothetically, they're Travis Sanheim, good player. They've tried to do everything they can to maximize his value. And there's a team out there because Lord knows the NHL has front offices that are constantly looking for defensemen that they think have some potential offensive upside. And Sanheim could be that guy. There is no team in this league that's going to take on that entire cap hit. And so then you're automatically hamstrung or handcuffed because you're all right, if we move him, we're probably eating half of that deal. Are you going to get an asset back that's worth having to pay, $4 million a year for the next, is it 6 years, the next 5 years? Probably not, unless it's a first. And even then, I didn't even know if I could make the argument that it's worth having that much dead cap or that much money held against your cap for the guy not to play for you. I don't know how many guys they really do have that they could move on from. The best case scenario here is try to at least get these guys playing hard for one another again. And if the losses keep piling up, but they're showing the effort, then great. If they don't, you don't really have another choice here. Whether you like the coach or not, I don't know what the other choice is because you can't now jettison 7 players off of this roster. They don't have guys that are on low enough deals to make it make sense. Unless you do want to screw yourself in the long term by eating half of a contract that you're not thrilled with. I don't know if people are aware of just how bad the situation is cap-wise for the long term. That to me is the big concern right now. And I don't know how you can pivot out of it.
Yeah, if you tried to trade a guy now, let's say, I'm trying to think of a guy, Coots. Coots is a good example. If you were trying to trade Coots or he wanted out of here, you couldn't just say, okay, we're going to go trade you and someone's going to take you. You'd have to eat a lot of that contract and give them a pick for someone to take that contract. That's going to be like that old Ghost deal there they did a few years ago.
Oh,
I couldn't believe that. I thought we got a second. I was like, oh my God, yes. No,
nope.
We gave
Nope.
one. Take the contract, and here's a second. There's a lot of questions, Russ. It's still in the early going, but like we said, it's getting late early. And,
so here, Bundy, let's we'll take a really quick look at this. But
Andrew Fawcett still wants to talk about 5-hole.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna get to that 5-hole in a second because everybody loves a good 5-hole. Let's take a look really quick at the Flyers cap situation. We can't use cap friendly anymore because the Caps bought it, assholes. So we'll go to Spotrac. So Couturier under contract for $7.75 million through the 2029-2030 season. Based on his play so far, that's going to be an impossible contract to move. Owen Tippett, you believe, is going to be a long-term piece here. I don't imagine that even if you had a team out there right now that would actively want to trade for him, that they would take on that entire contract. Travis Konechny, that contract, that new one, the $8.75 million cap hit, that kicks in next year, and that runs all the way through 2032-33. That will ultimately be the one that we're going to look back on, and history will prove correct that was one that you probably didn't need to give and probably shouldn't have given. Farabee, to me, is an issue, Bundy, and I would love to get your thoughts on Farabee because he doesn't look like he's got it. Now, it's not the worst cap hit, $5 million, 3 years beyond this season. Could you convince a team about Joel Farabee's upside? Is that a guy that you move off of? Or do you look at him and say, hey, he's still only 24. We've seen him be able to put the biscuit in the basket. Do you hang on to him? Like, where would you land on a Farabee if it came to it? Because you look at the rest of the there's nobody else you can move.
One of the most interesting players for me is Farabee. He's another guy. Like, remember last year, and we said to ourselves, who do you think's gonna or could it wind up being the guy that gets moved out of here in the summer? And we thought it was him. In the summer at the draft, I thought he'd be a likely candidate gone. It didn't seem like the coach really cared too much for his performance down the stretch. Remember last year he came out and said something like, there's some guys that need to check themselves here. And we clearly thought he was directing it at him. But yeah, you know what, Russ? That's $5 million. Like,
yeah,
there's guys like that making 2-2, in the league. And that was another Chucky special. It was. He got that contract done as soon as he was able to do it. Not a bad player, but again, for that, you expect somebody that's going to take charge, still at 24 years old. Take the wheel and go be a leader and be one of your offensive leaders for that. But I haven't seen. I really can't say I've seen a real impressive trajectory developmentally for Farabee. That doesn't mean he's bad. It just means I haven't seen him get repeatedly better year after year.
Yeah. I'd pull up the defensive side, but Bundy, I mean, I don't want to make anybody cry. Screw it. We'll do it real quick. Ryan Ellis, rest in peace. He's still getting some money on LTIR. Sanheim, we know what his deal is, 6.25. That runs all the way through what, 2020? Oh, sorry, all the way through the 2030-31 season. That was a Chuck special. I love when Chuck signed him to that with the no movement clause before he'd ever played a game for John Tortorella. That was a great moment. And then you got, like, Risto to me is maybe the interesting one because there have been teams each of the last 2 seasons that have inquired about Rasmus Ristolainen. If it were me, I'd be trying to figure out a way to put him in an advantageous position, get some good film out there, and put a bow on him by the deadline. That's very far away. I just hate the fact that, like, we kind of have to have these conversations because as of right now, the team hasn't done anything to even, like, get us to think, hey, there were positive signs last night. Hey, there were positive signs on Tuesday.
You can't even go there because what happens is you could make a case to trade any guy on the team right now because of the way the season started. I mean, everybody looks like trash right now. It does, and they're not, but it sure looks like it, and it feels like it because they've lost, was it 6 in a row after getting the game 1 win against Vancouver? So that's why it stinks. Everyone sounds negative. We sound negative. The players sound negative when you hear them after the game. It's frustrating. It is. It's frustrating. It's the early season. We were treated to a different look last year, and there was a lot of really good to that year. So a lot of goodwill and a lot of good all around. And I think that I think the fans saw that. I think a lot of people saw it. I think we want to have a slice of that back again. This team needs a win. It just needs to get going. Hopefully, like Torch said a little bit after, we ended up doing some stuff. Some guys got going. We got Tippett scored. Mishkov had a couple power play points again. But, again, 1 o'clock on Saturday, and you got Minnesota coming in. They pounded Florida the other day, 6-1. And 5 or 6-1, and you got to deal with them coming in here on Saturday, and then another back-to-back situation with Montreal Sunday night. So it's not easy. The good thing is you get 2 home games. That's one good thing. The next game's a home game. You don't have to go on the road and deal with this, but come home, take advantage of a good home crowd, and get ready to play. But there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of pissed off people right now, but I can't keep beating the drum for another 30 minutes. We know what it is right now. And they have to fight their way out. No one's going to do it for them. Nobody gives a shit how they're playing. Nobody cares that they're losing. It's a dog eat dog league, and that, quite frankly, the only ones who are going to get themselves out of it is the players, if they're going to at all. And it's got to start Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
Let's get to Andrew Fawcett here, who sent over a couple of super chats about Fedotov's 5-hole. He loves the 5-hole. I saw a lot of discourse last night, Bundy, where there were I'd say it was like a 60-40 split on people blaming Fedotov for what happened last night. And then people saying, like, no, he actually did play better. I mean, in fairness, it was a very low bar. Like, Fedotov looked horrific prior to last night. But, like, all things considered, not all of the goals last night were his fault. And he did make a few saves that kept you in the game. Like, it could have gotten away from them a lot sooner. Like, it could have gotten away from them in a much worse way. Like, they did kind of battle themselves back into it where, like, the final score looked slightly competitive. Would you say Fedotov looked better last night? I still saw, once again, I think it was the first goal of the game, traffic in front of him, and he gets very narrow again, right? Because he tries to look over the traffic. Like, it was almost the same thing that we saw in his last start. He doesn't get low to look around the traffic. He gets up high, and then he just doesn't get down and get the pads together, which probably leads to a lot of these issues.
I'm not a goaltending aficionado. I think every goalie should stop every single puck that ever gets shot at them. But I've been hard. I'm always hard like that on them. I always think, it's just a little piece of rubber. Stop the puck, for God's sake. Stop complaining. The 5-hole goal he's talking about was that one that was redirected when he slid across, and it looked like there was like 3 and 4 feet of open 5-hole. That was one of those ones where you're watching and you're like, oh my God, it looked like a goalie you'd score in a beer league. Because it is, the goalie tried to make the big kick save. He's very tall. Like, he's so tall.
6'7".
And I would imagine looking down to try to look over is harder, because when the puck does come, you're eventually going to have to scooch back down again anyhow. The other thing I noticed with him, and again, I'm not a goalie guy. I understand fundamentals of it, but another thing he doesn't do a great job of is reading the play. Like, if there's a shot taken, you're in the goal, you have to anticipate where the players are and where the danger is coming from. If a shot's going towards your left, you have to assume it's going to get redirected to the net. And that's what happened last night. So he's just got to understand the game better and read the play more than I think it's actually about making the stop. He's got to read the play to be able to make the stop. And I don't think that he understands the game enough over here to be able to forecast and foresee the play that's coming. That's what it seems like to me watching him, because it feels like he's reacting, but the reaction's late on any of the redirections and all the little things, the nuances that happen with a puck in an NHL game that maybe he hadn't seen before. But that to me sticks out like a sore thumb. His looking at the development of a play and having himself make the save or put himself in a position to make the save on that situational play.
Yeah, I
hope that makes sense.
It does. It's like the thing that's also concerning, right, is we went into the season saying, all right, they're going to give him a certain amount of rope, right? They're going to have him on a leash. It's not going to be a super short leash, but like, they're cognizant of the fact that, like, they have other guys within the organization that they might want to give a look to. Everybody kind of viewed that the Kolosov thing was sort of like tenuous footing. Is he going to hang out? Is he really going to spend the whole year in Lehigh Valley? Is he going to try to force his way back to Belarus? Like, what's it going to look like? He has not looked particularly good with the Phantoms, Kolosov. He's got an .878 goals or save percentage, a 3.06 goals against, 1-2 so far in 3 games for the Phantoms. He's by no means blowing anybody's doors off. I think they're going to just keep rolling with Fedotov for a bit, unless he actively costs them games. Like, last night, he made enough saves that you say the team's just not playing well. They're not playing well in front of him. They're not really playing well in front of Ersson either, but Ersson is a better goalie. I don't see them actively looking to make that move, at least until, like, if Kolosov gets to a point where he goes on a little bit of a run and he has like an elite 5-game stretch and Fedotov is actively costing him the games, then fine. Like, yeah, then maybe they'll make a switch. But I don't see them trying to put Fedotov on waivers to bring Kolosov up if Kolosov's numbers with the Phantoms suck. I just don't see it. You brought this one up. I'll let you read this one for the people who are in the podcast feed who can't read the comments because they listen. Go ahead. Do you want to read that one that you pulled up?
Who's Zamula? Yeah. Is anybody going to talk about how bad Zamula is? Why are we even doing? What are we even doing with him at this point? He's not an NHL caliber defenseman. They keep giving him absurd amounts of ice time. Yeah, we heard a few things on Kolosov. We hadn't talked to. That was a rough game. He had a rough couple games in these past two. Yeah, I mean, decision making. He's got to be way more authoritative with the way he makes his passes and breakout plays.
This is Zamula, right? Yeah, Zamula.
Honest to God, and again, he's been in around that league sometimes where you can come in and it feels a little bit easy, and then all of a sudden you can get stung by being in the league a little while, where you think it's going to be easier, and you realize, oh man, it's repetitive. Guys are starting to figure out who he is, what his plays are, what his tendencies are. He simply needs to be better. He flat out needs to be better. He plays too many minutes to play the way he has. And I'm not saying that maybe he deserves those minutes, but I'll tell you one thing, he's playing them. So that needs to transcend into far better play than what we've seen. That's all I got to say about Zamula.
Okay, that's fair.
That's it.
Pasendi over here on YouTube says, Russ wants to tank. He'll also complain about why the team is so bad, while they're tanking. No, that is incorrect. If I get the indication that the Flyers are actively trying to tank, which we would know if they start selling off players, we'll know that the tank is on. They will never, players will never tank intentionally. Coaches will never try to lose games. But if you give them a limited stack of useful cards, you give them a very limited set of toys to play with that can actually go out and win games, we'll know the tank is on. And at that point, the only thing I'll criticize is the effort. Teams can be bad. That I think today should be the biggest takeaway for everybody. You and I and Ant, we're probably fine. If they lose games, you don't want to see them lose. We don't want to go down and cover a losing team. We don't want to go down and do press row show and have to watch them get their teeth kicked in every game. But if they're going out and they're giving it 100% and they look like they're competing, they just aren't good enough to win, we're fine with that. And I think a lot of fans would be fine with that. But if they're going out and they're getting their teeth kicked in because talent is losing, and also they're getting out competed, that's where we have the problem. You said before about you can control a few things, right? You can control your own compete level. We used to have a phrase when I was coaching soccer, not hockey. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work.
Same thing.
And right now, they don't have the talent and they don't have the hard work. They have to do one or the other. They have to, at some point, play for one another. If they don't, there has to be a change. You simply cannot go through 40 games of this just listless play. You can't do it. That, to me, is where you actually do start to worry about the culture. Because if they look this disengaged for 40 games, to me, that actually does have potential ramifications down the line. That actually does impact the mentality of some of these players. And most importantly, what a shitty way to have Mishkov have his first season in the NHL with a dysfunctional team. You don't want that. You can't afford it. It's too important down the stretch. It's too important for the future of the team. Was there anything else you wanted to get to?
No, and I'm not really. I know some people have been a little bit negative on Danny. I don't think anybody should be really. I mean, he had two good draft picks. Mishkov, as we're mentioning here, both Briere and Mishkov, those are picks. But again, remember when people are going at Danny, to remember that he's been strapped with these really bad salaries. He's got some dead money weight that he just can't do anything with. So I implore people to realize that every year that money comes off the salary cap, he'll have more options to do stuff. So I don't want to sound too negative, but I hated the response last night. I just didn't like it at all. I wanted more there because I realized it was so bad the night before. And it's hard to win 2 games in a row and two nights against the same team. But, and I picked the Flyers both nights, which was bad. I can't say anything about it.
You're going to have to dig out of that hole. You're going to have to dig it out.
After a sizzling start by me, I got fried by the DC.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know what, Bundy? It's going to be okay. We are back down at Wells Fargo Center this weekend. Me and you and Ant. We'll be down there for back-to-back days. We'll have the afternoon matinee against the Wild on Saturday, the nightcap on Sunday. Grab your favorite cup
Sunday
of
night's
tea,
Sunday night's
coffee.
recovery night. Recovery
exactly
night
right.
again. It's Sunday night, recovery night. Get your tickets. Come on down. Get a picture with us if you want. There's going to be a lot of people. I know I probably have, I'm going to guess maybe 300 to 400 people that I know are going just for recovery night for
That's
that
awesome.
game. So yeah, you get your coin. We'll take a picture afterwards on the ice. So it's a pretty cool night, and everyone that is out for recovery night or battle in that battle, I salute you, and I will certainly salute you Sunday night. But 2 games, 1:00 Minnesota Saturday, 7:00 against Les Habitants on Sunday night. That would be the Montreal Canadiens, in case anyone doesn't know.
Oh, look at this. R Hextall87 says, my son is riding on the
Wow,
Zamboni on Sunday. Well, that's fun.
good job,
Enjoy
Hexy.
yourself. That's
Have
great.
fun with that, man.
That's great stuff. All right, we'll be back on Saturday. I do want to give you a shout too, by the way. We put out, I think people have mostly caught on to this, but not everybody has. So on the YouTube channel, we clip up different parts of episodes of this and Press Row Show. We put them in a different playlist, and the thumbnails are different. Like if you see a thumbnail, it's like gray in the background and has like the Snow the Goalie logo and doesn't have an episode number or anything. It's a clip. And so those go on to the YouTube channel. And sometimes people go on and they like join the live chat and they're like, wait a second, didn't this already happen? It's like, well, it did. Yes. The reason we do that is because that actually does bring in a lot of new subscribers to the channel. So if you ever get a notification and you're like, all right, I go over there and you see the thumbnail, it doesn't look like the normal one. You're like, oh, this looks like something that already happened. It's probably because it did, but don't forget to hit the like button before you head out. But Bundy, I'm giving you the shout because on the clip that we put out yesterday, somebody said that they got to meet you and you signed their book for them. And they were really thrilled to finally get to meet you. Have
Yeah,
their book signed. And so that was a pretty cool thing. I knew that we wouldn't be able to pull up that comment over here on this stream, but I did want you to
yeah.
know that there was somebody who checked in with that.
And some people do. Maybe like one. I get to like sign a book or two every game or every other game. So if you do have a book, just bring it over. I'll be happy to come up and sign it on the balcony if you have one. If not, no worries. We'll catch up anyway and just come say hi. We always love people to come up and say hi. So anytime you're up there, look for our banner that says Snow the Goalie.
It's a great banner.
A beautiful banner, Russ.
It's such a beautiful banner. I might have to get a bigger banner, or I might have to figure out a way to secure it better than the way that it's been secured so far. You know what the worst part is, Bundy? We need to train Intern Andrew, because when he sees that banner fall, he should dive onto the floor to protect the banner from touching the ground. You know, I'm not saying it should be akin to like not letting the American flag touch the ground, but like when that Snow the Goalie banner starts falling off one of those tables, Intern Andrew should be laying out. LaPerriere once took a puck to the face in a win in the playoffs against the Devils. The least Intern Andrew could do is crack a couple of his front teeth to save the banner.
I agree. We still need to present to our fans what we're going to do this year with our videos.
Oh, do you want to do it now? We could do it now.
Let's do it now. Let's talk about this. We were given an amazing idea in the summertime, and we want to do this. And we're going to come up with some prizes or something like that, or a way to honor you. But we want, if you're a parent, a grandparent, sister, brother, whatever it is, friend, and you have somebody involved in minor hockey, let's say up to the age of 18 years old, right, Russ? Got to have a cutoff, right? Send us the video.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
The hockey play of the week. And we're going to take it. We're going to embrace it. We're going to look at it. And we're going to say, this is the greatest play we've seen in minor hockey or hockey in this week. And it's got to involve your kids or the youth. Kids like doing something special at a hockey rink. It could be anything. It could be something off the ice. It has to involve hockey players. But we're looking for those great dramatic plays, spinoramas, maybe a Michigan goal, something crazy. We want to do that, and we want to honor anybody that can show the videos. We'll try to. Intern Andrew has been tasked with getting those videos. Russ, you get them the information where to send them, and then in the coming days, and we'll talk more about this on the weekend.
We'll just take them at snowthegoalie@gmail.com. You can send them in a DM over on Twitter. You can send it on Instagram. You can send it on Facebook. We make it very easy to access this show. So we'll take your plays of the week. We'll take those nominees. We'll play them on the show. We'll probably compile them into a playlist on YouTube as well. We'll have it open up where people can vote. It's going to be a whole big thing. So if you have somebody in your life who is playing hockey right now, and I'll even tell you, I know that we're saying, the kids and everything, but if you're a beer league hockey player and there's a great moment in your game, we might consider it. Or maybe we'll put it in its own category. Like the beer league play of the year maybe will be its own thing. But get those clips. It gives you a great reason to film games and to give the opportunity to have your kid or somebody that have them featured here on Snow the Goalie. So we'll roll out that play of the week. Maybe we'll start it next week, maybe, Bundy? In the next week
Yeah,
or
I
so?
think so. Yeah.
People
And
can
I know
start
that'll
sending their
grow pretty
submissions.
quick. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll get a bunch of people to submit some stuff, and winners of every week will get something, and then we'll enter them into, we'll kind of treat it like America's Funniest Home Videos, Bundy, like where you win your own prize for the week, but then we enter you into the big pool at the end for the grand prize. I don't know what the grand prize is yet. We'll figure that one out.
We'll figure it out. It's a cheesesteak with Anthony.
Where Ant sits there and says, I'm going to have the cheesesteak, but no cheese and no bun.
Anthony's still bummed about the Phillies.
Maria won't let me have any cheese or a bun. I can only have the beef. You know, that guy, he's always watching the calories. I miss Fat Ant. You know, Bundy, before we started doing the show together, when Ant was like very plump, when we first started doing the show, and before COVID almost killed him, years ago, Fat Ant was my favorite. Okay. We used to eat like you've never believed, right? And like now that we have tubular meats available to us every game in the press box, like Fat Ant and me years ago, we could have probably housed like 6 hot dogs each. And now Ant won't even look at a hot dog. That's sad to me. That's sad. All because he, got a little bit more svelte. I mean, good for him, and he's healthier, and it's all great. And it's good for, his long-term health, and good to be around for his kids as they get old. Yeah, fine. But I miss Fat Ant. I don't have anybody who will actively eat lots of food with me. Intern Andrew says he wants to have a competition for who can eat the most tubular meat.
Should we just call him Fant?
Fant. But now he's skinny Ant. Now he's Skant. All right, I think it's time for us to go. We have
Fant and
Skant. Fant and Skant.
All right, we're going off the rails, Russ.
We sure are. We'll be back on Saturday with the Press Row Show ahead of the Minnesota Wild game. We'll be back again on Sunday for the Press Row Show ahead of the Montreal Canadiens game. If you haven't done so already, seriously, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button because that is huge. It helps the reach of the show. It helps people who are Flyers fans who are just perusing YouTube. It helps them get funneled our way. So hit that like button. That's big. And if you can, especially all of you wonderful people who comment live, go into the actual comment section of the video. You can leave your favorite moment of the episode. You can leave something that you agree with, that you disagree with. Leave a comment. We'll try to do some of the like things. I think we're going to build out the community side of the YouTube page this year. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Apple or Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, we're out of here. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Bundy, thanks so much for doing this. And
you got it, kids.
And hopefully you'll eat a tubular meat this weekend. Intern Andrew, get ready to dive for the banner. Everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to all of you very, very soon.